We get so caught up in trying to not die that we forget that we have to live. And, it doesn't matter whether we have a chronic illness, whether we've got 5 hours, 50 years, whatever it is, we have got to live our lives.
Introducing the Vixen Voice, a podcast for ambitious women entrepreneurs ready to move into their feminine essence, live their truth, and unlock their full potential. I'm your host, April Roberts, and each week I'll be interviewing inspiring women who decided to take a leap of faith to pursue their dream. Women who believe that they were born for something bigger. Hey there, just popping in quickly. It's April Roberts, and I wanted to thank you for being a loyal listener of the Vixen Voice. It means so much to me. And because of that, we're going to be popping in these little announcements because I want you to be the first to know what's going on at the Vixen Gathering. So if you haven't done so yet, click the link below and check out the Vixen Founders Collective. The members who are already in are raving, and we would love to have you join us in the ultimate business consulting, networking, and personal growth community for Gen X female founders. See you there. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Vixen Voice. I have an amazing guest for you today, Deb Krier. She's an entrepreneur, cancer advocate, and the visionary behind Trying Not to Die.Live. So we are here to bring positivity into your life today. I know there's a lot of anxiety and uncertainty in the world, and Deb and I were talking backstage about how we're feeling that. She's based in Georgia, so the hot seat of a lot of controversy and negative events recently. But bottom line is, we're both individuals who practice gratitude on a daily basis, and we try to look at the positive side of things. So we feel today it's kind of our mission to bring you a positive message. So that's what we're going to try our best to do. And you're going to see that Deb is a bundle of energy, positivity, and just earned wisdom through her life. So that's why I love her, and I'm so excited to have you on today, Deb. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I've been called many things in my life, but I've never been a vixen. And so I love this. I think this is so much fun. I love that I am now a vixen. So thank you so much. I'm very honored.
You're welcome. I love it. You have all the traits of a vixen, so it is well deserved. So we're going to have fun today, but we are talking about some heavy topics. So just want to give you a heads up if you're listening, but all with a positive spin, because Deb, one of her passions right now is inspiring others to navigate the complexities of cancer with courage and power. So I love that. So Deb, tell us a little bit about your mission.
Well, it was one of those that you never thought you'd be doing, right? And because I was just going merrily along in life. I own my own company. I have a podcast called The Business Power Hour, and was such delighted to have you as a guest several weeks ago. And really, life was good. Just doing exactly what we wanted to do. Go for my annual physical, and they went, oh, and made me go back for another mammogram. Now, I worked many years ago, I worked for the American Cancer Society and for an oncologist. And so I knew it was danger. So I went back and was diagnosed with having microcalcifications, which I'm like, what the heck? So we turned to Dr. Google, right? And Dr. Google says, don't worry. Most women of a certain age get those. It happens when the hormones change in your bodies. And so, and so I was diagnosed as stage 0, which means really don't worry about it, but keep tabs on things. So not a lump, not a bump, just these little speckledy specks that are floating throughout my body. And had a couple more tests. Those came back just fine. finally, after several months, I mean, we were not in a hurry because, what the heck, it's stage 0. I
Right.
had lymph nodes pulled or surgically removed, I guess I should say. And 8 of 12 lymph nodes on my left side were positive for cancer, which meant that the cancer had spread. And so those little speckly specks had coalesced and were now causing problems. And so I decided to go the traditional route of what I was going to do with my treatment. But one of the things that I am very emphatic about is if you're going on this journey, you have to pick what is right for you. Maybe that's alternative, maybe that's a combination, maybe that's you're not going to do anything. Who knows what it is, but you are the person in charge. And so I did choose to do chemo, surgery, radiation. Now, I'm a special person. Right? And unfortunately, I chose the special route of what happened and had my very first chemo, and the world came crashing down. I developed a complication that less than 1% of people get. And at that point, I was the only person that ever survived it because you didn't know what it was until it was too late. So I went into septic shock, which is about 75% of the time fatal. It is, just not a good thing to do. Luckily, I'm 5 minutes from the hospital. My doctors knew what to do, although they argued about how fast I would die that day. But I remember thinking, excuse me, I get to vote. So was in and out or was in the hospital, in and out of ICU, in and out of the surgical room numerous times over the course of about 7.5 weeks. Went home and then decided, okay, the world is looking better, let's go ahead and do the surgery. So I had opted, again, totally everyone's personal choice, to have a double mastectomy without any reconstructive surgery. Part of it is I'm old. I'm like, ugh, who needs those, right? And so, but I got a complication from that my surgeon had never seen. See, there's a trend, right? And so, but the world brightened up. I sailed through radiation, had 0 complications, 0, you almost couldn't have told I had radiation, which was very unusual considering my complexion. I think about sunlight and I start to sunburn, and radiation is, of course, very intensive. Had no problems. So, had to deal and still deal with the ongoing complications from septic shock. I am still in treatment because even though this was 2015, I was not able to finish chemo, obviously. And so I have a port in my shoulder. I go in every 21 days. They hook me up for 30 minutes and away I go. But during all of this, I was working with my business coach, and she said, you didn't go through all of this without using it to help others. And I went, but I don't want to be cancer girl. I really don't want to put on that cape. And because part of it is, more than anything, we want our lives to go back to normal. Now, it's not going to happen. Even if everything goes perfectly well, once you have a serious diagnosis like that, it's that shadow that's there behind you waiting to come back. And so you're always kind of thinking about that. But yeah, I was in my business mode. I was going to no. But she talked me into it. And obviously she didn't have to talk me into it. I knew it was the right thing to do. But so we started trying not to die.Live. And the name comes from the fact that we get so caught up in trying to not die that we forget that we have to live. And, it doesn't matter whether we have a chronic illness, whether we've got 5 hours, 50 years, whatever it is, we have got to live our lives. And so that's the really important thing for everybody to remember is, you get caught up in that day-to-day, And, you mentioned at the start, there's some icky stuff going on in the world right now. Well, what do we need to do to make sure that we're living the best possible life that we can? And so that's kind of where we went with it.
I love it. And just caveat, I was not laughing because you were talking about cancer. I was laughing because I love your personality and how you deal with things.
I have laughed my way through this. And part of it is, that's just me now. And I'm like, really? Seriously? I mean, I've now had 34 surgical procedures. And I'm like, seriously? And when they told me that I had developed a 3rd cancer, So it's not just breast cancer, it's breast cancer, basal cell, and thyroid cancer. And when they called to tell me, yeah, it's positive for thyroid cancer, I said words that you and I can't say. Yeah, because it was like, really? And my doctor laughed and she said, yeah, that's why you're going to get through this. But, more than anything, I want to make the people around me laugh, especially my medical care team and my caregivers. Because, if we can make them laugh, that's the important thing. I mentioned that I did not do reconstructive surgery. I have prosthetics, so I have faux girls, right? And what do? I name them. Because you do, right? So my fancy ones, the expensive ones that came from the insurance company, those are Thelma and Louise, because they're pretty serious, right? But then I have another pair that came from it's actually a nonprofit organization called Knitted Knockers. And, and so because they're funny and they're Lucy and Ethel, and so, but yeah, if I can make the people around me laugh, and we all know that humor and laughter is very positive for you and helps in the healing process.
Yes. No, I agree. And I love that by you helping your caregivers laugh, they carry that energy into the next patient. Right. So it truly is the ripple effect. It's interesting because I was watching a show once and it was talking about beta waves or, brain waves in the different level. And they've studied and scientifically they've proven that the news puts out low frequency beta waves, which is what we're in when we're freaking out and we're stressed and overwhelmed. And so anyway, this was a very scientific presentation. And what they talked about was, okay, I don't understand why when you have a sick relative and you want to post on Facebook for everyone to pray for them, why are you putting pictures of them in the hospital with all the tubes? Because now you've had thousands or millions of impressions of them in that sick state. And that's the energy going to them. In fact, instead, post like a happy time picture and, hey, here's my dad. He just had a stroke. Please pray for him so we get back to happy times.
Yeah, we want to go back to rafting or whatever.
Yeah. And people don't think this way. So I love that you bring humor. I love that you bring positive energy to your caregivers because we know the stress they're under and that they're serving other patients as well. A couple of things you touched on, I really wanted to kind of bring to the forefront because I will be the first to admit. So I am working with a weight loss specialist now because being perimenopausal and having been on every diet in the world, I was always slender and I'm like, okay, this weight, like I keep losing the same 5 pounds. Like this is frustrating. So I was like, I need someone to tell me what to do. So anyway, Elena Burkhart, she'll be on anyway, amazing. And she got on to me because I have quit going to my primary care physician because my primary care physician shut down in 2020, right? So I've been to the clinic when anything was wrong, but I'm not doing preventative medicine, which I was always really good at. I would literally go into my doctor and be like, you're not going to see me again for a year, so give me every test you want. Like I go get my mammogram, right? Because I am blessed and I historically have been extremely healthy and I just okay, test for everything. If I'm good, I'll see you next year. And I haven't done that. And so rightfully so, she got on to me because many of us have gotten out of this since. So I want to thank you for that reminder. It's the second one I've had recently. But I too was diagnosed with these microcalcifications like when I was 30 years old and it's never shown up again and I'm 48. And I just want to point out because they connected at first it was okay, we need to go into this. So for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I was like, oh my goodness, I might have breast cancer. And I literally had just given notice to my job that had insurance and I was moving to Italy with my then husband. And I was like, what kind of healthcare am I going to have available to me in Italy? So I went through this 3 to 4 week period of really freaking out. I have no idea what's going to happen. And then when I went for the additional testing, they kind of were like, oh, it's no big deal. So I always or maybe they said I had fibrous breast. I don't remember, but it was something similar. And they're like, you know what? It's not a big deal. We're just going to watch. And so I wanted to kind of go back to, I heard when you had the microcalcifications and you thought it was no big deal for a couple of months, and then suddenly you went in and it was a problem and you started doing treatment. So what happened in that time period? Can we go back, Deb? Because
Sure.
I think this is important for
Right.
people to be educated when to take it serious.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the microcalcifications, think of them as grains of salt. I mean, that really is what it is. And according to Dr. Google, about 95% of women get them. It really is something that is just going to be floating through our bodies. And obviously the vast majority of the time there is no problem. Now, what I had done was, and it's funny because the primary care doctor I had at that time, I ended up selecting a different doctor. I thought that he, I just didn't like him, but I was like you. I went once a year and I have high blood pressure. And so I went to him to get my prescription refilled for the year, right? And to have him order my various tests. And, and so it was okay for me to just tolerate him, only seeing him once a year. But when when we got the test back that said, hey, you need further consultation, I believe is what it was, he referred me to the breast surgeon. And then I never talked to him again. He never followed up. He never did anything. And, when I was in ICU in the hospital, I was across the street from his office. And he would have, as my primary care doc, he would have been getting notifications about what was going on with one of his patients. And he never showed up. And I thought, no. And so that's one of the things, too, that I tell people is you have to trust your team. Might not always like them, but you have to trust them. And so my new primary care doc, God bless her, she makes me come in for an annual physical twice a year, because that way she can keep better tabs on me. And I'm perfectly fine with that. But, and so what he did was, as I said, he referred me to the surgeon. I went and met with her. She obviously reviewed everything. And then she did a couple of biopsies. And at that point, what she did was, they're called stereotactic biopsies, where basically a needle is inserted and they're trying to grab, what might be there. Well, these are itty bitty little speckledy spots. And so they came back as negative, and so again, we were just kind of thinking, no. Now, but at one point they did say, okay, let's do an MRI because that's going to show more detail. When, for anybody who's had an MRI, those are not fun, especially if you're claustrophobic. They're really not fun when you're doing one for potential breast cancer, because in a regular MRI, you're laying on your back. In a breast one, you're laying on your stomach, and there's a form that is, so you're kind of hanging down. Let's just put it that way. And, and now, as you can probably tell, staying still for me is very difficult.
Same.
And so I know, and so I got the call. We didn't get a good picture. We need you to come back. And, and I had already potentially freaked out before. And so I said, okay, there's only one way that we can do this. You're going to have to sedate me. And so they didn't completely knock me out, but I kind of dozed off and on. And those came back with the lymph nodes showing there was a problem. But I had a massive infection from poison ivy on the same side. So again, they went, that's probably what it is. But let's go ahead and have the surgery to pull the lymph nodes. And so it was actually kind of luck that we, thank you to poison ivy, that we went ahead and pulled those. But it is one of those things, if you're not comfortable with what they're saying, then find another doctor. It's a very difficult time because, of course, unless you're diagnosed with something major, you have to wait. And even when you're diagnosed with something and so it's like, okay, so you're living with the potential of what the heck is this going to be for weeks until somebody says, here is what it is. And then I ended up changing surgeons. I didn't like her either. There were several things that she and I just didn't click. And so I switched. And so I've switched doctors multiple times because this is a long-term type of thing. But yeah, you need to do that. Now, the one thing we kind of joked about Dr. Google. Folks, step away from the keyboard. Dr. Google, for one thing, you will get overwhelmed with the information that is there, and it will scare you half to death. Either that, or you will read the articles that say, hey, there's no problem, and you should be worried. I tell people the best resource that I recommend is the Mayo Clinic, because they're going to provide pretty good information. And so you can go on their website. And, even though I work there, I still refer people to the American Cancer Society. They are going to provide lots of great information. So don't get yourself in overwhelm mode. And the other thing is, you might not want to be talking to people about it, because then you're going to get all these, oh, this is what happened to me. This is what happened to my sister, my friend, my whoever stories. And then you're going to scare yourself even worse. And so, yeah, it is a rough time until you get that true diagnosis.
Yeah, and you want to be careful what opinions you're seeking out. And I want to double down on, again, I am a blessedly healthy individual, but, my parents are of the age where we're dealing with a lot of things, and I'm the oldest child, and my mom wants me to hear everything, so I'm usually there. And I can share, my mom had a situation, she has a blood disorder we discovered a year ago, and so her platelet count gets dangerously low. And so going into the holidays last year, it was like below 10,000, which basically if you trip and fall, you're going to bleed out. Like it's very serious. Like, so she literally was not leaving the house because Lord forbid you get in a car accident, right? Like, and so we're going into the holidays. She's a nervous wreck. And thank goodness the nurse at our primary care office understood. And she said, look, I know we're going into the holidays. Here's my cell phone. If you have anything you don't feel well, just call me. And I can't tell you the comfort that gave my mom, because, she's like, we're going to the holidays. My doctor's not going to be there. No one's going to be there. So I think you do have to, especially when you have a serious situation, find the caregivers who really care. Like care is a key term, and connect with them.
Well, you said something that is absolutely critical, that you went with your mom. When we're told, hey, you have cancer, our brains, like we're saying, freak out. So when you go for those initial appointments, especially here's your chances of, and all of that, all of those, take somebody with you. And have them listen, have them have the questions, because you're going to go, oh, and not even remember what you want to ask. And more importantly, the doctor's going to tell you things and you're not going to remember what they said. It's okay to record it. And if the doctor has a problem with that, then there's a different problem. It is not a HIPAA violation. I had a doctor tell me that. I said, no, I can't record somebody else's. I can record my appointment. Yes, and so, but yeah, take somebody with you. Now, all the future appointments, you might not need that, but I love that you go with your mom, because, I tell people, when we go to the doctor and they say, you've got the flu, we go home and I go, when am I supposed to take my medicine? Right? We just, our brains don't always function well when we're at the doctor, and especially when we're sick.
Yeah, no, my mom got taken to the emergency room because she had brain bleeds, and that's how we discovered this. And I was in Spain. So I was in Madrid, Spain, which I'm sure is a beautiful city, but I was in such a state that I just stayed in my hotel room, like ordered room service because I was trying to get on the first flight, and I got there. And then, yes, I did. I was like, I'm going to stay until we get all the medications. I help her figure out what's going on, etc. And it gave her comfort. But I like the idea, be careful who's around you in these situations and know the roles that people play. And I think, I talk about setting boundaries a lot, and I love that you talk about being your own advocate. Sometimes you have to be your own advocate with your family as well, right? If you have 5 children, who is the most level-headed child who's going to be there and listen and not freak you out and be your advocate? Because, there's always, I have a brother and sister, and we all react differently in these situations, right? And so you have to really realize that, because it's funny, I play the opposite with my sister's kids, because my niece just had her appendix removed. Again, I got on an emergency flight to get there. And, my sister's a single mom. And even though my sister's super intelligent, like she's very on top of things, she's a great mom. I mean, she's a single mom, and that's your child. And so my role in that instance is to play a clown for my niece or nephews. So I'm not the freaking out one, like, even though I might be inside, and to be there to support my sister. And I think, I think it's really important. It's okay to ask for help in these times, because like you said, definitely. Your brain's just not taking care of
Right.
it. Like,
Oh yeah.
you
You know, and another thing, it is very important, especially if you have all these multiples, but even, no
oh,
matter what, and I hate to say this, but you got to get your legal affairs in order.
I
You
agree.
have your will, have your medical power of attorney. Now, here's something I discovered with medical powers of attorney. Those are not legally binding contracts. The hospital can choose to accept it or not. And now virtually all do, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if say you're in a hospital that is, there are hospitals that are religious based, and so they're going to have a different philosophy about maybe end of life, or the doctor might even, you never know. And so you might say, DNR, so don't take any extra, and they could say no. And also you could tell people, hey, this is what I want, and somebody could still say that's not what we're going to do. And so just know that. But especially when you have more than one child, or multiple siblings, I mean, who is the in charge person? And
Right.
make sure everybody knows they are the in charge person. When I was so critically ill, my mother came. Now I'm an only, and so she came, of course. And as we all put it, she didn't come to help, she came to be in charge. And she
Mm-hmm.
was not in charge, my husband was in charge.
Yeah.
And and I was not where I could say anything, but but I did have everything legally done. I had the powers of attorney, I had all of that. But there were a couple of times where my husband had to go to the care team and say, she's not in charge. She doesn't get to make these decisions. If something happens when I'm not here, you got to get a hold of me. Because
Yeah.
there were a couple of times where she made some decisions. This same decision would have been made, but she was the one that made it. So yeah, just make sure that everybody knows, here's what's going on.
No, that's a great point. And one thing I highlighted was when you said record it, because when someone's not able to
Mm-hmm.
be there with my mom,
Mm-hmm.
she'll love that. I
Right.
don't know why
Mm-hmm.
we never thought of
Mm-hmm.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
you're just dealing with so much,
Mm-hmm.
but these are like pieces of nuggets. And honestly, this is, valuable for taking care of yourself. But most of my
Mm-hmm.
clients and most of my listeners, like, we're
Mm-hmm.
starting to take care of our parents in some
Right.
capacity,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
you have
Mm-hmm.
to like really, any of these tips are
Mm-hmm.
great to have at your
Mm-hmm.
disposal, because
Right.
I know the first time I had to be there for my parents, my mom had basically, she almost bled to death. This was
Mm-hmm.
before the platelet problem,
Mm-hmm.
and she had a total blood transfusion. And because of that, they gave her an MRI, and they
Mm-hmm.
discovered she had a baseball-sized tumor. So, like, we
Yikes.
took care of that. Yes. So
Mm-hmm.
that week after, I'll never
Mm-hmm.
forget. She was on
Mm-hmm.
morphine the whole week, and if you know,
Mm-hmm.
morphine can make people
Oh
mean.
yes.
And my
We.
mom is
Mm-hmm.
like the sweetest person in the world, but
Mm-hmm.
ooh. And I will never, I mean, kudos to caregivers, because
Mm-hmm.
that was the most emotionally, physically, and mentally
Oh yeah.
exhausting week
Mm-hmm.
of my life, when
Mm-hmm.
you're suddenly like taking care of a parent. And my dad
Mm-hmm.
was staying in the hospital with her every
Mm-hmm.
night. I'd stay at their
Mm-hmm.
house and then send him home to shower in the
Mm-hmm.
morning and be
Mm-hmm.
there during the day.
Mm-hmm.
But it is, just be prepared. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
anyone is prepared for that
No.
role until you step into it. You have
Well,
it,
and
and it
especially when
shocks
we're
you.
caring for the parents,
Mm-hmm.
and when that role reversal thing, and depending on what's going on, they may push back. I have a friend who was going through this right now, and her mother was like, I am perfectly capable of doing all of this. Well, she wasn't. And so that was the tricky thing also. And it is hard when we are the children who all of a sudden have to be the parent.
Yeah. Yes. No, for sure. And one other thing you mentioned, I also wanted to second, was getting to the hospital quickly. So again, you heard, I go to
Mm-hmm.
the doctor like once a
Mm-hmm.
year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not someone who's a hypochondriac to run. Probably I should go more. But the similar you shared when you were in septic shock, like basically you got
Mm-hmm.
to the hospital quick enough that there
Mm-hmm.
were options, right? Even
Right.
though the
Mm-hmm.
doctors didn't believe so. And I love
Mm-hmm.
how you said, do I have a vote in this? Because
I know.
you
I
always,
was like, yeah. Now, my husband said the conversation was a little bit different, but he said that really was what the gist of it was.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, your energy going into things. That's like when my niece was
Hmm.
going into her surgery for appendicitis. I was like, "Remember, you're a fast healer." And she was like, "What do you mean?"
Hmm.
I was like, "Remember when this happened this?" She goes, "Oh, yeah, cuz
Hmm.
I wanted her going into
Hmm.
surgery with the mentality
Hmm.
of I'm going to be
Right.
good.
I'm
I'm a
coming
fast
out.
healer.
Things are
I'm
fine.
protected.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Yes,
Hmm.
everything's good." And so like that's our
Hmm.
little secret I always whisper to her. But anyway,
Hmm.
my father had a stroke a few years ago, and it was
Hmm.
when we were
Hmm.
working together, and it was end of day, and I
Hmm.
went in there to tell him bye and good night,
Hmm.
and he couldn't articulate to me, and he also has diabetes,
Hmm.
so this happens when
Hmm.
his blood sugar's too low.
Right. Yeah. So
Um,
you're like, what's going on?
Yep. So I grabbed my director of ops because her dad has diabetes too. I grabbed my mom, you know, and we're like force feeding him like cheese and salami and candy, thinking it's blood sugar. And little did we realize was having a stroke. And so, you know, after some time passed, I was like, he's not getting better. He's normally better. And of course, my mom's in shock. And she's like, well, let me drive him to our hospital, which is 45 minutes away from our office. I'm like, Mom, there's a hospital across the street. And she just wasn't thinking straight because
Right.
it's an
Oh yeah. You
emergency
don't. Hmm.
situation. And I was like, no, get in the car. I'll drive y'all and I'll park and come in. And the doctor said if we had been 15 minutes longer, my dad would be paralyzed. And because we got him there, they could break up the calcium. You know, I mean, he still had therapy for his speech, etc. But now you wouldn't know anything was wrong with him. And literally 15 minutes longer, you know, so when it does seem serious, get to the emergency room. If you're overplaying it, who cares? Like, get there because the
Well,
doctors can save your
and
life,
we have
literally.
urgent care clinics on every
Yeah.
corner, it seems like,
Yep.
right? And those, because they can, they can arrange transport immediately, if
Yeah.
that's what's needed. One of the things is to be honest. We
Yes.
downplay. Oh, I'm
Yes.
fine. I'm okay. And I think especially as women, because we got so much going on, right? No, I can't
Yes.
be sick. I have to cook dinner tonight, and this kid has to go to soccer, and this one needs to go to band practice, and
Right.
and I think the thing to remember is the sooner you treat it, the sooner you get better also. If
Yes.
we wait until we've got, a massive sinus infection that's, icky, nasty, then we're down for the count longer than if we'd gone on antibiotics the first, or, maybe you're not an antibiotic person, but, if you've gotten treatment
Right.
earlier, you're going to recover faster.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I so agree about we women. I was just having that conversation with Faith, who does my hair and makeup this morning, because I was like, I was getting a massage yesterday and they were touching this one
Mm-hmm.
spot. And I was like, why is that so
Mm-hmm.
tender? And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
probably it's tender outside of the massage. I'm just too
Mm-hmm.
busy to
Yeah, you
notice,
just
right?
hadn't noticed.
Like,
Yeah, especially because it could be in a place. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and so I was like, and we were talking about that, how, you know, as women, we tend to just keep going and
Mm-hmm.
like we don't realize, oh,
Right.
okay, there's an
Mm-hmm.
issue. I should deal with
Yeah.
this. So no, I totally agree with that. I love
Mm-hmm.
it. So Deb, you know, you kind of said to me one time, businesses don't get cancer, do they? So
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about that.
Right. I think that was one of the hardest things was to keep working, right? And it's always a challenge for anybody. One of the first things they think is, well, I can't tell anybody because then they're going to think I can't do my job.
Yeah.
Or they're, on a different, a positive note, they're going to say you need to focus on healing. So you do that. But, you mentioned losing your insurance. So many times people
Yeah.
have to stay working because they need that paycheck and they need
Yeah.
that those insurance, and luckily my clients, when I said, hey, this is what's going on, they went, what can we do to help you? And so that was perfect. And obviously everything is different for every single person, but the business does suffer to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
I had 6-ish weeks where nothing happened for my business. I mean, it just was not going to happen. And
Yeah.
I was able to pass some tasks off to some people, and some things like that. But and it's a challenge also if you have an employee that is dealing with something like this, because there's all sorts of federal and state laws that start kicking in with disabilities and all of those things. And it's because if say I'm the employee and you're the boss, and you come to me and you say, hey, what's going on, I don't have to tell you anything.
Mm-hmm.
Or I might say, here's what's going on, but you can't tell anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you can't. I mean, you cannot share that information legally. So, then what if the other employees are going, wait a minute, how come Deb gets to leave at 3 o'clock on every Thursday?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you just have to, And so it is a challenge. But I think the other thing that people need to remember is we often need to keep working so that our
Yeah.
brain has something else to focus on. And I've been in the hospital sometimes for fairly long periods of time and nobody knew
Mm.
because hospitals have really good Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And even my phone. I mean, I sit at treatment doing work.
Yeah.
I just keep going, and that's what gets now. Other people are going to sit and read, they're going to watch movies, they're going to sleep, they're going to do whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we need work to give us something to focus on.
Well, yeah, and I agree. And also sometimes it can be very frustrating when you're getting different treatments because even if you're used to it, suddenly one week they're running behind. And if you have something to do, it keeps you from going into frustrated mode, which obviously is counterintuitive to healing. So you don't want to be, frustrated in any way. And we kind of touched on this when we were talking about be careful who's around you and who you take to the doctor, etc. Like, oh, I don't want to say be careful. I prefer to say be intentional, right? Like give it
Yes,
some
be
thought.
very intentional.
And because I know you always talk about building your tribe and don't go it alone. So, like, what kind of tips do you have for that, either for anyone listening who might be dealing with something or helping their parents or family members?
Well, it starts from the term warrior. Someone
Mm-hmm.
sent me this when I was, pretty early diagnosed, and it said, "Fate says to the warrior, you cannot withstand the storm." And the warrior
Mm-hmm.
responds, "I am the storm." And I even have warrior tattooed on my arm,
I love it.
because that reminds me. And I tell people I'm not a patient. I'm a cancer warrior. But
Yeah.
warriors are never alone. They are successful because they have their
Mm-hmm.
tribe around them. So you have to bring in the people who, and it could change. I mean, depending on what's
Mm-hmm.
going on, but you need to bring in who is the right part of your tribe. And tribes have healers, they have spiritual people, they
Mm-hmm.
have, the hunters, the gatherers, they have all of these things. And so you need to build that tribe around you. But it is a challenge because, we
Mm-hmm.
as that warrior, somebody says, "How you doing?" Well, I don't want to whine. I don't want to be a bother. So I'm going to tell you I'm okay, or I don't
Yeah.
need anything. We have to be honest. And part of that is we have to be honest with ourselves, right? We have to be honest and say, I need somebody to do this for me. I need this, I need that. And that is, again, that's very hard because we're business owners. We're very independent. Heaven forbid we ask
Right.
for help. And so, we need to do that. And then, and like I said, your tribe changes, as your
Mm-hmm.
situation changes. Get that tribe around you. And it's funny so I have a couple Facebook groups, one for trying not to die.live, but then I also have a truly private one, and there's like 400 and some people that are part of that. And
Wow.
and that's where I post my true updates as to here's what's going on. And
Yeah.
I remember one time when I was in for one of my, umpty ump number of surgeries, thinking, well, I can't die. All those people will be mad at me. But more importantly, I knew that I was surrounded with this bubble of people sending prayers, sending well wishes, sending healing thoughts. And so I was
Mm-hmm.
not alone. And I really, truly felt their presence as I was going through it. And I
Yeah.
think that is one of the most important things to remember is you don't have to be alone.
Yeah. I love that. And from the flip side, too, because sometimes when you are the tribe or the support team, you're at a loss for what to do. And
Mm-hmm.
just
Right.
remembering that praying, sending them good
Mm-hmm.
energy, being a
Mm-hmm.
positive force,
We
that
feel it.
is
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
exponential. Yeah, I love it.
Right.
Thank you
Right.
so much for
You
sharing
know,
that.
that is one of the questions I get though is what do I do? I don't know what to
Mm-hmm.
do. And one of the first things is it is the elephant in the room. So it's okay to
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge it
Yeah.
and just say, I'm really sorry you're going through this. But
Mm-hmm.
if you just say, let me know if there's anything I can do to help. Our little
Yeah.
brains are so befrazzled that we can't do that. But if you say,
Yeah.
can I bring you lunch on Thursday? Can I take your kids to a movie? Then our brains can grasp that and say, okay, I don't want lunch on Thursday, but how about dinner on Friday? Or even just thank you so much, but I'm good. Because when people choose to say nothing and ignore it, we get our little feelings hurt and think they don't care. So it is okay, even if you're just saying, how you doing today? Because then we can choose how we're going to respond.
Yeah. And I also think this is good advice for life. People freeze in moments like this. So I
Right.
appreciate you sharing that. And often it's the little things like you don't think of. Or even if you said, how about if I bring you lunch on Tuesday? Then we might say, no, but I'd love it if you took my kids to a baseball game, right? Like
Right.
then at least instead of putting them in thinking mode, they'll respond back with a way you really could help them. Or
Yep.
no, but I'd love it
Oh,
if you
yeah.
went to the grocery store for me, right? Because
Right.
it is proactive. And I think in life that's important. I have a fellow entrepreneur friend who's going through a tough situation and, she had to let people go last week. And I was like, hey, do you want to hop on a Zoom? I just want to check in with you. And by the end, we were like
Right.
rolling laughing. And, it's just like you have to have these people that like you're their tribe and they're your tribe.
Right.
And
Right.
sometimes it's just like checking in and you never know where it goes.
Well, and especially if we are a single business owner because we're here in our spare bedrooms, right? And so we have to have that support system, whether it's formal like a mastermind group or informal with just your friends, but, provide that support. And I think that's so important for people to remember is, maybe it's, I'm going to call you and say, hey, April, I've got this decision to make between two clients. Here's this or here's this. Or I'm thinking of doing this new program. What do you think about it? I actually am meeting somebody tomorrow to talk about a potential project that I'm working on. And, and I told her, I said, I will take you to lunch if I can get some feedback from you, and so, but yeah, I mean, and she could have said, no, I'm busy. Okay, that's fine. But don't hesitate to reach out.
Well, and I love it. And when I'm coaching female entrepreneurs, I always tell them, but again, we go back to the word intentional. Be intentional about who you ask for help. Because I had some clients who would post on Facebook, hey, here's my new website. What do you think? And you get 50 opinions. Well, that's counterintuitive. Like, that's not helping. Like, have your almost like advisory board. It could be one person, it could be 3 or 5. And like, this is who you go to for opinions. Like, I love, like, you're asking one friend, hey, can I take you to lunch and can I get feedback on this? Because that friend is going to give you good advice in the situation, or they've been there, or they've had the experience, or maybe they're more successful than you in that. And so instead of just asking everyone, be very intentional about that. I love it. Well, I know we are almost out of time, Deb, and I want to talk about if you don't know what to do, Deb has this amazing bear hug care package. So can you share with us about that? And you have such a generous discount for our audience. So
that, like we said, sometimes people just don't know what to do. And so what if you could send them a bear hug? And I mean, isn't this just the cutest darn little bear in the world? And it comes with other things. There's some temporary, because not everybody likes the real things, inspirational tattoos, lip balm that is unscented and unflavored, because sometimes that's not going to go good. There's several other things that are in this package. We sent one to Germany several weeks ago, so now we have international bears. But it's a way for somebody to say, I'm there for you. I'm sending you this thing. And it came about because I had some friends when I was in the hospital who sent little stuffed animals about this size. They went with me everywhere, off to surgery, off to x-ray, off to wherever. And I'm surprised they always got back with me, right? And I'm pretty sure my husband snuck them home on occasion and cleaned them. But I knew that I was not alone. It's kind of like having that bubble again, right? And sometimes we just need something tangible. And this is like the softest little darn bear in the world. And so, yeah, we do have an offer. If you want to order a bear hug for somebody, you we're more than happy to offer 10% off. And that's good forever. Don't think you have to do it within the next 4 days. That, as long as I'm doing this, that offer will be good. And sometimes it really is just, I've been thinking about you today.
I love that. And if you're listening and you want to send a bear hug care package, you can find the link and the discount code in the show notes. If you are not checking out the show notes at vixengathering.com/podcast, then you should go there and subscribe, and they get delivered to your little inbox. It makes it very easy for you every Tuesday and Thursday. So
we like easy.
Exactly. Definitely go check it out. And I promised you that Deb is a ball of energy and wisdom. What I didn't warn you is that she's full of laughter as well. So I know we talked about some heavier topics today, but I just wanted to have Deb on. I love her attitude about life and her experience and journey and how she's navigated the complexities of cancer. So Deb, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we wrap up, I want to ask, because being a Vixen, we know how to tap into our feminine energy when needed, right? We want to be balanced, feminine and masculine.
Right.
So I'd like to ask you, when do you feel you're most feminine?
It is a little bit of a challenge because of like some of the surgeries and things, but I think it's when I allow myself to feel the emotions. We say, hey, I'm happy, but you know what? There are times where I think this sucks. So I think when we allow ourselves to feel and to honor and give ourselves that grace, I think that is something that is so very important.
Yeah, I love that. Not to that degree, but I had a recording day yesterday, and it started out with a not pleasant experience. So you kind of tuck it behind, right? And like go about your day, because I have guests showing up and I need to honor their time. And last night as I was praying, I was kind of numb about it. And I was like, this is weird. And I was like, God, please remove whatever I'm putting in place, like to defend myself. Right. And boom, I started crying like that. And I cried for 2 minutes and then I was fine. And I went to bed, right? So we do these things. It's part of our ego. It's part of getting through the day. It's part of honoring other people. And so I love that. Thank you for pointing out that sometimes we just need to say, okay, I'm putting down my defenses. What's really going on? And then, then you can forgive or ask for forgiveness and move on or be grateful for the outcome, whatever happens. So I love that. And my last question is, what color is your feminine energy?
Fuchsia. So hot pink, right? People are like, oh, breast cancer is that baby pink. No, it's fuchsia. It is that hot color, right?
Yes, you are fuego. I like it. Awesome. Deb, thank you so much. As always, it's such a pleasure to have you. And
I am truly honored.
Thank you so much. And if you enjoyed this, go check out Deb's podcast. Go check out her amazing website. Again, all the information is below. And if you want to converse with her, go to our YouTube channel. There's a lovely place you can leave comments. And we always make sure that our guests see your comments. So feel free to communicate with them there. Follow her on social media. And as I always say, the world needs more love. So today, maybe who's someone going through it, like what we talked about today, right? Who's navigating some illness or complexity? And what's a beautiful way you can just remind them that you love them or remind them that they are loved. So have a wonderful day, everyone, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks again for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit subscribe so future episodes are automatically downloaded directly to your device. And if you want access to today's show notes, including links to all the resources we mentioned, visit vixengathering.com/podcast. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week for another episode of the Vixen Voice.